Order. Dame Chiomora to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Ms Vaz, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Now, I beg to move that this House has considered technology sovereignty. We are 4 years into the Ukraine war and 10 days into the latest Iran-Israel-US conflict. At the start of the year, the US seized the president of Venezuela. A few weeks later, President Trump was demanding Greenland from Denmark. The world has never felt more insecure and unsecure. For the first time since I was elected as an MP, global insecurity is an issue on the doorstep in Newcastle. And if this were not enough, we are also undergoing 2 technology revolutions, a data revolution and an AI automation revolution. Adding to that, geopolitical restructuring across different dimensions, Europe, US, Global South, Russia, China, Europe, Russia, Iran, Gulf states, and a green industrial revolution driving competition for knowledge, resources, land and people. And is it any wonder people are feeling insecure? In the face of these challenges, we must be honest with our constituents about what we can and cannot control and the implications for our industrial, civil and defence policy. Ms Vaz, technology sovereignty is a key part of this and a placeholder for larger fears. Too often people feel big tech is controlling, not empowering their lives. Techno-feudalism and techno-serfdom may not be commonly discussed in the pubs and playgrounds of Newcastle, but it is a fear many have. The previous Secretary of State for Technology said big tech needed to be treated as states, not companies. If so, who are their citizens? Is it us? We certainly didn't elect them, so are we just their serfs? And what should be the relationship between these companies and states? So technology sovereignty matters, but what is it? The Secretary of State told the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee that sovereign capability is about ensuring the UK has what it needs to become a global leader in AI. The Digital Minister told us sovereignty is a huge issue that we always discuss. Security, safety and resilience are all parts of that, and the digital spending controls that DCIT puts in on behalf of government, which examines individual contracts on that basis, very much examines these issues as well. It is about building these capabilities in supply chains here, he said. Sure, yes.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and she's put forward a very powerful vision of what is globally affecting the country right now. One of the things that I'm seeing when I'm talking to sovereign defence companies, defence tech companies, is they get to the point of scaling up and they're not able to access finance. Does she agree with me this government should be supporting defence tech companies scaling up so we can have true sovereign capability as opposed to letting them fly off to America?
I very much agree with my honourable friend. He is absolutely right, and that support should take the form of access to investment, but also procurement and procurement decisions, which I will discuss in some more detail. Because the Defence Minister also told my committee that there is no single internationally recognised definition of digital sovereignty, and that DCIT is working to develop a comprehensive definition that can be used across the UK. Now, we haven't received an update, but yesterday the government launched the AI Sovereignty Unit with £500 million, so it is to be hoped we know what we are spending our money on. Now, I cannot help but give way to the honourable member.
You're incredibly kind, and it's always a pleasure to come to a debate that the honourable lady is having. Recent studies indicate that the AI-powered tools have already been used in splishing and ransomware and social engineering attacks, making breaches faster, more targeted and harder to detect. The National Cyber Security Centre has repeatedly warned that the sophistication and scale of cyber threats are increasing and that AI could amplify these risks exponentially. Does the honourable lady therefore agree there's a critical gap in investment, in expertise and coordinated strategy in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to both defend against AI-enabled attacks, and government must focus on being able to combat these in the future? Does the honourable lady agree?
I agree that we certainly need to be able to defend ourselves against AI attacks, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. The House of Commons Library Thank you. Yes.
I thank the Honourable Lady and Chair of my Select Committee for giving way. Would she not agree with me that a definition of sovereign tech is something that a foreign power could not switch off, so that our systems upon which we rely could not be pulled out from under our feet, much as the Microsoft ones were for the International Criminal Court?
I thank the honourable member and fellow member of the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee for that intervention, and he raises a very important point about the definition of sovereignty. I don't want to get too bogged down in the actual definition, but I do agree that control really matters, and I'll come on to say a little bit more about that. And in fact, I do want to raise the definition of a digital sovereignty in the House of Commons library briefing, which accompanies this debate, which says it is the agency and capacity of any organisation to make intelligent, informed choices to shape its digital future by design. You know, on that basis, choosing between AWS and Microsoft for your data centre is technology sovereignty. And I also think that if British sovereignty depends on our leaders' ability to make intelligent choices, well, then they've spent a lot of our history not having sovereignty. The library definition came from a global consultancy called Public Digital, and Emily Middleton, the interim director for digital transformation within DCIT, was previously a partner at Public Digital. And they rule out digital independence and say that our goal should be intelligent dependence. So can the Minister say whether he is aiming for intelligent dependence? The definition I like best is that sovereignty is whatever a sovereign power says it is. That is what sovereignty means. Yeah. And the UK has extraordinary technological human capital resources, particularly in AI, where we're probably third in the world, but also in clean energy, quantum, synthetic biology, many more. And because of our human capital, we are not just any mid-sized country. I think we can aim higher than intelligent dependence. Elon Musk chose to turn off Ukraine's Starlink capacity at a critical time in their defence of their sovereignty against Putin's illegal aggression. None of us want the UK to be in such a position of dependence. Now, I will give way, please.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady for giving way. She mentions Britain's extraordinary human capital. In my role as my party's Europe spokesperson, I've been speaking to very large international defence firms of late who thrive in the UK intellectual environment. They've got great links with universities, but they say to me that they're increasingly looking to move some of those startups that have been created in the UK into Europe so they can assemble rapidly the kinds of teams that they need to take those initial ideas and scale them up. So does the Honourable Lady agree with me that having a closer working relationship with our European partners and colleagues, allowing that freedom of movement to return, be an enormous benefit, counterintuitively perhaps, to our sovereign capacity?
I thank the honourable member for that intervention. Indeed, the level of interest shows just what an important issue this is. And I will come on to discuss some aspects of collaboration in terms of sovereignty. But I do want to observe that the last time our sovereignty as a mid-sized power was seriously debated was during Brexit. And the slogan, "Take Back Control," reflected the sense that too much sovereignty had been ceded to the European Union without an honest debate with the British people. Now, as a member of the Labour Party, I know we're stronger together and that can require some loss of autonomy to deliver results which do actually make people more secure. But this must not be done without an honest debate. So let us look at 4 specific sovereignty challenges. Firstly, critical infrastructure and cloud data dependency. Now, the Competition and Markets Authority found cloud services in Britain are dominated by AWS with 40 to 50% and Microsoft with 30%. Crown hosting is meant to be our sovereign hosting capability, but only hosts 4% of government legacy services. Now, both AWS and actually Oracle claim to offer a sovereign cloud. They do say you should deal with the difficult part in the title. The second issue I want to look at is the hot topic of AI. There's no Brit LLM, but there is the ambition to transform our public services and industry through AI. And the AI Opportunities Action Plan repeatedly references sovereign AI and sovereign compute without defining it. The major AI companies, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, Microsoft, DeepSeek, are all headquartered abroad. Now, DeepMind formed Google's AI capability and was founded right here in the UK before being bought. So can I ask the Minister what capability the UK now has in AI, what minimum capability he thinks we need, and how do we respond to the EU Cloud and AI Development Act, which may exclude UK companies?
On that subject, we should give way.
I will give way.
I'm very grateful indeed to my honourable friend for giving way. I think she's making an incredibly important point. And of course, we know when it comes to AI, there is an enormous amount of investment that's needed. In fact, many discussions at the moment about the impact of that huge investment into AI. It's very difficult for a smaller country like the UK to be competing in that regard. Does she agree with me that then we need to be working with like-minded countries on these issues, including those in the EU, and would she agree with me that we need to make sure this is one of the key topics when President Macron visits the UK later this year? Thank you.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I do agree with her that we need to work with like-minded countries. Third area is cybersecurity and data governance. Now, some argue that we're already at war in the cybersphere, and last year's Strategic Defence Review emphasised cyber and electromagnetic domains and established a new cyber EM command to enhance that with £1 billion in new funding for homeland air missile defence and cybersecurity initiatives. Now, should these be British suppliers? Should they be European ones? Should they be exclusively NATO ones? On data governance, the Foreign Direct Project Rule allows the United States to restrict access to advanced computing chips and AI-related software. And by adding UK companies to the entity list, the US can immediately cut them off from cloud services, software and AI tools, while the Cloud and Patriot Acts expand data access powers to compel US companies to hand over data even if held overseas, i.e. in the UK. So has the Minister discussed these powers with the Microsoft, AWS and Palantir? And fourthly and finally, the UK's reliance on global supply chains. Now, critical minerals are an obvious example, but because I'm a bit of a geek, I want to mention SIMs, or Common Information Models, that enable Internet of Things to talk to each other. By 2030, there will be 6 billion SIM connections globally, and China controls 70% of the market, creating a huge possibility for disruption of everything from traffic systems to energy grid operations. Now, that's a real quick canter through just a few of the technology sovereignty issues. And I want to go on to look at two specific examples in more detail. Firstly, the NHS has the largest and most comprehensive longitudinal and structured patient-level data sets in the world, and I support the push for digital integration as we transition the NHS from analogue to digital with interoperability and standardisation, bringing faster access and better analytics. And yet a growing share of this NHS data flows through US companies. The Federated Data Platform contract places core NHS data operations on Palantir's proprietary systems. Why? There have been numerous reports of irregularities in the way this contract was awarded. In addition, and this for me is a key point of sovereignty, Palantir's founder and controlling stakeholder, Peter Thiel, has a political worldview which is at odds with British values. And the same is true of Elon Musk. It does our constituents' sense of agency no good to see their government so dependent on these companies. And nearly half of adults say they would opt out of NHS data sharing if the platform is operated by a private foreign provider. And the second example is also to do with Palantir, their recent defence contract, which also raised many questions. The Strategic Defence Review emphasised AI as a core enabler of military capability. Reports suggest Palantir serves primarily as a vehicle for integrating Anthropic's AI models. Now, the US has just declared Anthropic a supply chain risk for US companies. So will Palantir break UK workflows that are using Anthropic? I'm certain President Trump would not allow British companies to control US defence data sets. So why are we allowing American ones to control ours? Ms. Vaz, I could go on about civil nuclear, about telecoms, about infrastructure, subsea cables, quantum, space drones, but I want to stop there and finish by looking at possible solutions. Now, technology sovereignty was a big theme at the Munich Security Conference, and the US-Europe trust gap was a yawning chasm following the shock realization that we could not always count on the US as an ally. Technology sovereignty solutions which focus on technological leadership, such as the Secretary of State's definition, reflect the basic idea that if the UK leads on, say, protein folding, then Google may be less inclined to switch off ChatGPT if we side with Denmark when the US tries to seize Greenland. Whether I agree with that approach or not, it certainly resonates with evidence which the committee heard from witnesses in so many domains of how important it is for the science and business community to understand where government is seeking to lead, so that resources can be focused and skills built there. So can the Minister say whether government plans to decide which aspects of AI or quantum or space or bioengineering we will seek to lead on? And AI is often thought of as having three layers: infrastructure, data, and applications. Can the Minister tell us where in the AI stack we are aiming for control or leadership or sovereignty or whatever you want to call it? And would the Minister also agree that weak competition in the AI and digital sectors caused by giant incumbents reduces our ability to lead? Next, open source is often cited as at least part of the solution to sovereignty. I'm a huge advocate for open source. Open interfaces, transparent code, and standard protocols can reduce or minimize dependence. Despite policy ambitions, 3/4 of NHS trust development teams do not use open source approaches. None of the AI models currently being deployed within the public sector are open ecosystems. All are proprietary in nature. The Minister's department has signed off on all significant IT procurement. So is open source a requirement of that? And finally, I would like to look at science diplomacy. Can it help us negotiate technology sovereignty? And a number of members have raised the issue of collaboration. Can we build on our human capital strengths by collaborating and working with partners who have respect for our values and collaborative approaches, and also share with us the financial capital needed to make our sovereign objectives into reality? And are we happy to share our leadership and perhaps our sovereignty with our allies? Just very briefly.
Ken giving way, and she's making a very important speech on a very important topic. She's absolutely right to talk about the US and China and how they dominate on technological sovereignty. And part of the reason that's very difficult for the UK to compete with is, of course, the scale that those countries have. So I wonder if she would agree with me that the way we can compete is by cooperating with reforming Europe. And we should view our strategy not how can the UK outcompete Europe, but how can Europe, with the UK at the heart of it, outcompete the US and China.
I thank the Honourable Member for that intervention. It is a very important question, and I won't give I'm not in a position, say, to choose our allies, but I do agree, actually, in principle, that we should be working with the European Union. I don't think it should be a choice between the European Union and the US, though they may make that the choice. But I certainly think we should be working with our European allies in order to form a large market, and a large market for secure and, if you like, ethical technology, which is in the interests of everyone. And as working with our European allies, we can seek to do that. And just finally on this, we need to monitor future sovereignty implications of current research so that can influence our investment and mergers and acquisitions policy, so key technologies and companies are not easily allowed to go abroad. So this debate has attracted a large amount of interest, and so I'm trying to be brief as possible. I've asked the Minister a large number of questions. If he cannot answer them all, he can write to me. But in summary, we need to understand what can we own, control or lead on ourselves? What can we access that is in the hands of allies we trust? How can we manage the things we must get from those we don't trust? Always remembering that how we develop and deploy our human capital will be critical to our ability to achieve any kind of technological sovereignty. And I urge the Minister to be honest about where we are. We do not want to sleepwalk into technological serfdom and or some kind of Texit, a technology Brexit.
Could we just, if you stay standing if you want to speak, we're on a very tight time limit because I hope to take wind-ups at 8 minutes past 5. So we think roughly a time limit of 2 minutes and then everyone will get in. Daniel Zagner.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. Pleasure to serve with you and the Chair, and I congratulate my honourable friend, the Chair of the Select Committee. 3 very quick anecdotal points and then a question for the Minister. Look, data sovereignty has been part of my life. I started my career as a trainee computer programmer at Shire Hall in Cambridge, and my prime job was to carry the punch cards to the punch room to make sure the payroll ran properly. If you dropped them, you were the least popular person in the entire institution. At that time, the idea that that could be triggered by someone from elsewhere in the world would have seemed fanciful. A decade later, I was working for a major insurance company, struggling to deal with multiple records of the same clients, and we brought in the Americans. And they were big people from Texas, really big people. When they went to the coffee machine, they came back with 2 coffees and 2 bags of crisps. But they couldn't solve that essential problem. And the question still remained, who was in control of the data? Fast forward 2 further decades, as MP for Cambridge, a major American software provider came to talk to me about the cloud, and the same question arose again. And I asked, where is the data? And they said they were going to build more data centres in the UK. Now, I know it's more complicated than that, but that question of sovereignty and independence, I think, is also partly about people. And I have to say, we've got to maintain our own workforce. So can I just quickly raise with the Minister an issue which has been coming up very strongly to the Science Committee about the changes at UKRI in terms of funding. I think it's an unfortunate, unintended consequence of a laudable attempt by the new regime to really implement the goals set up a decade ago to use resources more rationally. They've fallen foul of the existing research council structures, which means that even though the government is putting more money in overall, we've got a situation where people in the particle physics, astronomy and nuclear physics sector are facing 30% of cuts. It can't be the intention of UKRI. I hope the Minister can confirm it isn't the intention of the government, and it will use his influence to get a rethink, because our technological sovereignty will not be secured if we're closing doors to future researchers and putting a key part of our research sector at risk.
Alison Gardner.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. It's an honour to serve under your chairship, and I congratulate my honourable friend for Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West for securing this debate. Ensuring we have a strong and secure technological landscape within the UK is vital, not only to our growth and development, but also our national security. But as we move at pace, we must also move with precision. This brings me to the £500 million Sovereign AI Fund. It is a very welcome commitment, but the impact will depend entirely on how it is used. I therefore ask the Minister for assurance and clarity on how this new funding will genuinely break from past initiatives and deliver real measurable impact. That means being transparent about who will receive support, what priorities will shape those choices, how we will ensure true diversity, not only in the people and organisations involved, but in the problems we choose to tackle, and what value judgments we are employing in the decision-making process. If we want innovation to flourish rather than stall, we must make sure smaller British and diverse organisations are actively supported to grow and scale. I would warn against being dazzled by big promises with big tech, particularly those who are not British. I am pleased to see the government's commitment to building AI infrastructure, data security and compute power. We see this in terms of data centres, AI growth zones and supercomputers, as well as the AI Sovereign Fund mentioned earlier. However, I ask the Minister how we can be assured that such investment happens and has impact. What oversight will the government have to ensure funds are used as intended, that outcomes are audited and impact recognised? Governance of funding beyond product time frame is vital. And I want to just mention again the issue about definitions. We must be clear on what we are supporting. Often the terms technology, digital and AI are used interchangeably as though they describe the same thing. But digital is not the same as technology, and neither is synonymous with artificial intelligence. If we are to build a coherent national strategy, we must be absolutely clear about what we are talking about, what we are funding and what we are trying to secure.
Thank you. Bayo-Alaba.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Ms Vaz. I thank my honourable friend, the member of Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West, for securing this timely and vital debate. In a world that is increasingly reliant on secure and stable access to digital technology, whether that is artificial intelligence or semiconductors, the ability to control those technologies must be a government priority. Securing technology sovereignty in the United Kingdom should not be a difficult undertaking. We have world-class universities, industry-leading research institutions, and the manufacturing capabilities to turn ideas into marketable products. However, world-class research is only half of the solution to achieving control over the innovative technologies created in the UK. When a UK university spin-out or research group is forced to trade its intellectual property for Silicon Valley venture capital, we lose more than just a business. We lose our grip on national security. I welcome the government's plans to streamline the Intellectual Property Office, but believe there are also lessons we can learn from our intellectual counterparts, where strong links between universities, research groups and industry have given rise to countless pioneering companies. There is no reason why the UK could not be supporting universities to own their own intellectual property and nurture their growth by encouraging partnerships with private enterprise. What's more, through closer collaboration between government, businesses and research bodies, we will not only protect our national interests, but also bolster the financial situation of universities and higher education institutions where funding shortfalls are already leading to layoffs and even partial closures. Take, for instance, the University of Essex decision to close its South End campus, where dozens of my constituents are facing imminent redundancy and hundreds of students are searching for certainty regarding the future of their courses. The University of Essex senior leadership has itself pointed to an unsustainable funding model as a reason behind this devastating decision. I am grateful that the issue of technological sovereignty is getting the attention it deserves, and I hope the debate prompts further consideration of the benefits of IP capitalisation for our world-class universities. Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha Niblett.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. It's an honour to serve under your chairship, and I'm grateful to be able to contribute to this important debate on tech sovereignty in the UK. And there is something rather poignant about us having this debate on the very day the Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister has announced a consultation on plans to give people access to their government data through a digital wallet built bespoke and in-house. In many ways, that is the ultimate expression of tech sovereignty. But there is much more to do, and we must do it now. For me, this growing instability has shone a light, the growing instability geopolitically, globally, has shone a light on just how reliant we are on digital infrastructure, the systems that enable our communication, support our health service and help keep our country safe. The FT recently reported concerns about Iran targeting US AI data centres, and it's a way to undermine neighbouring economies and damage US interests. As AI becomes embedded across both the public and private sectors, we must recognise the risk posed by concentrated powers in the hands of a small number of overseas tech companies. At its most basic, sovereignty means the ability to make deliberate choices in our own interest with our shared values. So it's concerning that so many public sector contracts continue to go to overseas tech giants. In November 22, we saw Palantir was awarded a 3-year Ministry of Defence contract worth £75.2 billion, followed by, in December of 25, a further 3-year contract worth £240.6 million, both without a formal competitive tender. I'd love to see more of these major contracts going to homegrown innovators, companies based in the UK paying taxes here and helping grow our economy. And so that's why I'm really pleased to hear the commitment of having a sovereign AI venture fund of £500 million to foster AI development. I'll welcome seeing how much of that goes into female founders. But the UK is by no means the little guy in this fight. Our startup ecosystem is the 3rd largest in the world. We have real opportunity to grow. If we get this right, tech sovereignty can mean high quality jobs across our regions, and it can ensure that we become the most trusted and safest country in the world for technology.
Thank you. Steve Yem.
Thank you, Ms Vaz, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I want to speak about technology sovereignty from the perspective of the East Midlands. I think that too often Westminster debates are focused on venture capital, high-level digital strategy and so forth, while the real foundations of our tech capability lie in specific industrial regions. And the East Midlands already has those capabilities to anchor British technological sovereignty. Derbyshire and Derby, one of Europe's most important aerospace hubs. Nottingham, home to 2 world-class universities driving innovation in materials science, data science and advanced manufacturing. And for Nottinghamshire, and in my constituency, that means linking university research directly to local production, strategic public investment in those areas like advanced manufacturing, export-focused technologies in particular, and I think it means encouraging pension funds and public investment programmes to support domestic capital rather than sending wealth abroad, and restoring political and economic confidence in post-industrial communities in the Midlands and in places like my constituency. So this is not just a slogan around sovereignty, it's a matter of real practical capacity and around technologies that shape the future, designed, built and designed here rather than elsewhere. And the East Midlands already contains many of those pieces, Ms Vaz, needed to secure that sovereignty. And so the task is to recognise them, back them, build a new national political economy that puts production and skills and that regional industrial strength at the centre of Britain's future.
Thank you. We've got 2 more speakers, and as I said, I'll take wind-ups at 5:08. So your kind colleagues have given you slightly extra time. Emily Darlington.
Thank you, kind colleagues. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Madam Vaz. This is such a big debate, and it's because we are all passionate about UK AI and the growth of this sector within the UK that it is so important, because the growing monopolies that we see that are coming into our country are not actually helping our growth. And I know that's quite a controversial statement, but it isn't if you think about how these industries are developing. They are buying up and squishing out UK inventions and growth and companies. So what is sovereignty? It was a question posed by the Honourable Member from Newcastle. For me, that is UK ideas and UK inventors, and it's UK based. But it's also about UK values. It's about using our own data protection laws, our own standards developed by BSI. It's about making sure that this is the point that which they can sell to the world. And it is without foreign interference. And when I say that, I don't say that lightly. Recently, Peter Gurnis, the AI security expert for Palantir, said, "The lesson was speed. The market for military AI does not pause for ethics. It pauses for nothing." This is a problem when we are giving contracts to the MOD, from the MOD, to companies like this that do not think that warfare does not mean that it ignores international law. And for that very reason, we have to be very sceptical about going into business with Palantir and many of the other ones who feel they are too big to follow national law. And similarly, I raised this before on the floor of the House, the idea that Starlink is the safe way for our emergency protocol is an absolute fallacy. Why? Because they can turn it off. Elon Musk has said he hates our Prime Minister, so what if there's an emergency now and he wants to create chaos, as he's already done with his contributions to various marches in this country and to his support for the one-man band that is, I can't remember what they're called now, Restore with something or other, something that starts with a R. Anyways, the growth comes from the development of our UK ideas. It comes from tech that supports the UK economy. It comes from making sure that we see the monopoly as a threat to our growth and not something that we need to curtsy to or bow down to. And so I asked the Minister, what's next?
we have a great fund, but the reality is, what are we investing in? Are we making sure that quantum will be the technology that's developed here and serves us, serves the UK people and the UK economy? Are we making sure that we are providing those opportunities for UK firms to get the amazing contracts to work with us to make this the first digital government that the UK has ever seen?
Thank you. Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. Can I say what a pleasure it is to be able to take part in a debate with you in the chair? Can I also thank my honourable friend for securing the debate, and in my best Geordie, she's done a geek canny job again. That's the end of it, don't worry. Much like my honourable friend before me, I am here to talk about quantum technologies. Now, to most people, the word quantum sounds like a James Bond film, and if I'm honest, Casino Royale's better. But it's so important to the future of our economy, and not just because crusty old physics teachers like me get really excited about it, because the quantum industry is projected to generate $100 billion globally by 2035. That's not that far away. Now, the economic impact is one thing. The fact that it's going to revolutionise defence, it's going to revolutionise huge amounts of our civil infrastructure, means that it is a great example of why technological sovereignty is not just an economic issue, but a security issue too. Now, the UK is home to some really exciting quantum research and quantum businesses, and it's vital that we keep this industry here strong and growing. The government is aiming to make the UK a leading quantum-enabled economy by 2033, and that's something I absolutely welcome. But too often, as those businesses scale, they're tempted abroad. And how do we stop that? One of the things that I don't think people have been able to touch on because of time limits today is to improve the skills supply, not necessarily just at PhD level and all that we associate with physicists often, but those lab technicians, those people who are going to be physically building the machines, maintaining the infrastructure. It's vital that we get the skills supply for those guys too. People don't need to aspire to a doctorate to be able to do every single part of the sector, and we need more pathways in for apprentices to be able to do those roles, which are more skills-based. We need better access to capital for quantum companies. We have brilliant startups, but every time they go through a round of funding, they find it harder and harder and harder to secure the funds they need to be able to remain in the UK. We also need specialised infrastructure, cryogenic systems, advanced fabrication facilities and secure quantum networks. And actually, we also need to ensure that many more of our colleagues understand that this next industrial revolution, the quantum revolution, is coming, and we need to get ahead of it. That's why I've brought together a number of members to form the Quantum Technologies APPG. Many thank you to my colleagues in the room who are part of that. If I can just finish with a final plea to the Minister. We're here to talk about technological sovereignty, but we live in a globalised world, and I'm hearing real concerns from the sector about procuring helium. The international situation in the Straits of Hormuz has meant that Qatar, which is home to one of only 2 plants that produce semiconductor-grade helium, has been forced to pause because it's been targeted by Iranian airstrikes. So if I can ask the Minister, and I'm not expecting him to have the answer immediately, but if you can have a look at that and have a look at how we can support that sector during that time of huge uncertainty. Thank you very much.
Beautifully done, and thank you all to colleagues. Victoria Collins, Lib Dem spokesperson.
Thank you, Madam President. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And a massive thank you to the member for Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West, the chair of the DSIT committee, for not only securing this debate but opening so eloquently and constructively about which is one of the biggest issues of our time. We indeed live in a digital world. Our jobs, our banks, our transport, our national security, all of it runs on technology. So the question of who owns that technology and who controls that data it generates is not an abstract one. It is a defining question of our time. It's about choice for our government and also consumers. It's about growth for British tech, indeed in a global world. And it's about resilience by diversifying risk. And a bold strategy in technological sovereignty is how we meet that challenge. It means backing British tech, supporting innovation by British businesses, paying British taxes, strengthening our economy, and crucially, protecting our national economy. As members across the chamber today have talked about, member for Newcastle, is about that security. The member for South Derbyshire talked about the risks of foreign interference, and the member for Milton Keynes Central highlighted that Palantir felt they were too big to follow national law. That is about our security and is vital. We also see across the pond President Donald Trump, who's demonstrated his willingness to weaponise American power, and especially when it comes to American technology, for his own political will. Even at home, we see what's happened with Anthropic, who's called them left-wing nut jobs and directed all government agencies to stop using Anthropic tools just because of the company's refusal to allow military unfettered use of its AI tools. We've also seen this approach, as mentioned before, with the ICC, whose chief prosecutor was personally sanctioned by the Trump administration, and including the disconnection of his Microsoft email last May. But these episodes expose the reality of the world's increasing vulnerability, the digital infrastructure underpinning international institutions, and by extension our own public services, which can be increasingly disrupted at the discretion of a foreign government. And these concerns are shared. A study in just June last year by CIVO, a UK provider of sovereign cloud, found out that out of 1,000 UK-based IT decision makers, 83% worried about the impact of international development on their data sovereignty, with the majority considering data sovereignty today as a strategic priority. And yet, even though the member for Newcastle highlighted the statistics over what's used, it seems it's not a concern of government, in the sense that we have asked the Secretary of State directly how dependent we are on public services on US-based cloud technology, but our answer was that they do not know. That is not being measured on a government level, and that is of serious concern. And one of the most basic requirements of resilience is knowing what you depend on. So I asked the Minister, do we intend to start collecting that data? And at this moment, our essential public services may be running at the mercy of Donald Trump, of these big tech firms, and this government can't even tell us by how much. And sovereign technology is not just a matter of national security. As many members have highlighted today, it's about our economic advantage, it's about growth in this country, improving national standards for technological development and boosting public trust in modern technology and increasing, indeed, the tax revenues for the UK. Luca Leone, CEO of Cahoots, writes for Tech UK, the crucial question is no longer only who builds our platforms, but who owns and operates the systems that underpin our most critical capabilities. And that's where digital sovereignty meets supply chain resilience. The member for South East and Rochford spoke eloquently as well about the skills, the businesses, the spin-outs, that university research that is so strong in the UK, and we need to help them stay here, scale up finance was talked about a lot. We can be this global leader, and we should be. But highlighted by this debate is also that many of the money set aside for technological investment is not going to UK companies. The National Audit Office concluded that the government's procurement strategy actively favours large, predominantly foreign suppliers. And when the government has a budget of £14 billion for these investments, where does that money go? Dan Jones, the Defence Account Manager for Secure, writing again in Tech UK, wrote about that digital sovereignty is not just a single procurement decision. It's an ongoing commitment to control, assurance and resilience, and that we can see that when it comes to public service contracts, that's worryingly against that trend. So the contract we talked about, Palantir in the NHS, we've talked about Palantir in defence, and indeed the member for Newcastle talked eloquently about questioning how much these the leaders of these tech firms are in line with British values, and really ensuring that the tech we have is also in line with that. So can I ask the Minister if he can explain why Palantir was prioritised over UK tech, for example, than the NH contract, and what work is being done to review our government processes? This is also not just about software, but our telecoms infrastructure, and the reliance on Starlink has been mentioned, which is increasingly worrying. And of course on our cloud. But I will then wrap up by saying, ultimately, sovereign tech is about power over our everyday lives. And so will the Minister agree that now is the time to secure our own technological sovereignty, and also support our amendments in the Cyber and Security and Resilience Bill about a digital sovereign...
Thank you. Thank you, Ms Vaz. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I warmly congratulate the Honourable Member for Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West for steering such an important debate. It was so well attended. It's a real shame it's not for longer, and I commend the 2-minute raps that everybody gave. And in this context, I plug the debate that we're holding tomorrow, the Conservative debate on government support for UK tech. There will be an opportunity to, I think, to speak about some of the concerns that I think are being shown on a cross-party level about the direction of tech policy. We all come to this place with experiences that shape our thinking on these critical tech issues. The Honourable Lady, as we've probably never heard before, but is a former telecoms engineer who brings her expertise to Ofcom, now a distinguished Select Committee chairman. The Honourable Member for Cambridge with his experience as a computer engineer, or the Honourable Gentleman as a crusty old physics teacher who talked about quantum. And one of the questions that I had in relation to the launch of the policy today on digital identities is this going to be a quantum-proof system that is being built? I come to this as a former Cabinet Office and Telecoms and Digital Infrastructure Minister, and during my tenure, the government in which I served faced 3 supply chain crises that permanently changed how I think about resilience. That's Brexit, COVID, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And each of those forced us to confront very uncomfortable truths about where we source from, who we can trust, and what risks we carry when we fail to think strategically about our dependencies. I also think about my experiences on a trip to China in 2018 as a new backbencher visiting Huawei's Shenzhen lab. I later found myself as the minister overseeing the removal of high-risk vendors from the 5G core, and I saw how an earlier decision not to scrutinise those providing critical infrastructure came at real economic cost as well as security costs. Security risk and economic risk are today deeply intertwined and will become ever more so as more of our economy moves online. Now, as we've seen in the space of a week, those Gulf economies, which have been expanding voraciously into the digital sphere, have found 3 AWS data centres under attack. A very deliberate strategy from Iran to cripple critical digital infrastructure and with it to mete out economic pain and chaos. So I think those experiences shape how I think about the concept at the centre of this debate, which is technological sovereignty. And we have to be clear what we mean about that. It doesn't mean autarky or complete self-reliance or pretending that Britain can or should build every piece of technology ourselves. That's not realistic, and neither is actually risk-free. It's not about stopping important tech companies from investing here and bringing those expertise. I see it instead about being about resilience and influence. And what it means is understanding the risks that we're carrying in the tech stack that we increasingly rely on, mitigating those risks, and ensuring we do not steadily reduce our own leverage by ceding power to companies or countries whose influence over those systems may ultimately exceed our own. We're seeing this play out in cloud, where I think we really need to be pursuing a dual strategy, where alongside the hyperscalers, we start to expand our edge capacity, smaller data centres, a more pluralistic market, really using competition policy and thinking strategically about procurement. We need to think about it in terms of the components that power modern computing. How do we make ourselves an indispensable part of any particular critical supply chain in the way that Taiwan and the Netherlands have become in chips? We need to think about those concerns in relation to Chinese tech in energy policy, which I think as we move further into the renewable space, I think we're building in quite a lot of risk there. We heard today about critical minerals, and I've talked about high-risk vendors in telecoms. Dependency on China or America are not equivalent risks, but nonetheless, having learned the lesson about Chinese technology, I worry that the government now appears content to place an extraordinarily high level of dependence on American hyperscalers instead. Now, of course, the US is our closest ally, and it has enormous expertise that we, in many respects, cannot match in every field. But sensible allies hedge their risks, especially when we think about some of the cloud rules that they have, which have been mentioned today. And I think there's an odd strategy going on here with the government, where we are upping our dependency on the US while reducing our reliability and credibility as a partner. Similarly, while inviting circular investments in mega data centres, entering into data partnerships with AI firms, and blowing ever larger balloons of fantasy out of the US-UK tech partnership, something that's been picked up today but also in The Guardian this week, this government is actually also making it harder for UK tech firms to grow, whether that's government procurement, high taxes, crippling energy costs, wealth taxes, and all the rest of it. Now, I appreciate we're very short on time, and I'm getting a little shuffling nod along. But my worry is that this government has thus far not had a strategy for tech sovereignty and is also heightening our dependence on US hyperscalers. I would be very grateful if the Minister could address these concerns, which I think have been shared across the House.
Minister Kanishka-Narayan.
Thank you, Chair. It is such a pleasure to serve with you in the Chair in particular. And can I firstly thank my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle upon Tyne Central, the Chair of the Select Committee in particular, as well, on securing this debate and bringing her deep expertise across both engineering, policy making and leadership in the House as well on the question of tech sovereignty. Can I also thank all honourable members for raising very thoughtful points, bringing a range of experiences to this debate, as well as swiftness of speech in the particular constraints imposed by time today. I'm grateful to all of them for their contribution to this debate. And I'm grateful because I have felt for a long time that the central question in our politics and for our country is the future of technology in this country. It is going to be the major driver of prosperity and dignity for people, and the central question in that is whether Britain gets to shape it or is, in fact, shaped by it. My particular view, Chair, has been that in Westminster we sometimes talk about technological sovereignty as an abstract geopolitical goal, but we have to keep in mind that sovereignty is ultimately the basis of our NHS radiologists having access to the best tools for detecting cancer with data here in the UK. It is for British founders and builders the basis of being able to train and deploy models, not just depending on foreign APIs and pricing. It is for people in their homes and workplaces across this country the basis for knowing that their everyday AI assistants are governed transparently, democratically here in the UK. My view is that sovereignty is the ability for a state to have strategic leverage when it comes to a technology, such that it can ensure, one, ongoing access to critical inputs, and two, ongoing assurance that its wider economic and national security objectives can be met more broadly. It is, of course, to take the best that the world has to offer in terms of tools today, but it is also to shape the rest, and it is ultimately to make that which is critical here in Britain. The strategic leverage is obtained by three steps, as I think of it, on the ladder. One is just to have enough of the critical inputs. If we take AI as an example, you just have to have enough of the chips today to be able to do anything with AI in the first instance. With this in mind, the government has always been very keen that we are able to secure the level of capital investment that means Britain was at least at the table with critical inputs. Once you're at the table, the second part of sovereignty is to make sure that you have some diversification in who you're procuring critical inputs from so you can bargain effectively. We are the party of Labour. We understand that who has power matters as much as what the powers are. Therefore, for that context, one of the first things that I did in my role was to engage with a series of companies in every part of the stack so we were able to build more diversity into the landscape. And the third rung of the ladder is ultimately to build British, to make sure that we have the full fat version of sovereign capability here in critical parts of the stack. This is an area that I'm happy to give way.
Thank you. Yes, thank the Minister for setting out his sovereignty stack. Just as an example, say an AI model, an LLM, is that a critical input or is it is it at another level in the stack, and does it need to be British?
I think one of the points that I really valued my honourable friend making earlier was that sovereignty has to be seen in the round. We can't make everything here, and we have to look at the entire bundle that we have to offer. In the context of LLMs, I feel there is some uncertainty as to whether closed proprietary models will be ultimately where all the capability accrues, or whether open source, open weight models might be part of it. And so there is some uncertainty in it. To me, as things stand today, it is a pretty important part of the stack. And so then the question is whether we have enough of it to be able to make the most of it in terms of adoption and economic as well as national security usage here, or whether there are aspects in which, at least from a distillation or small model point of view, we need to develop some capabilities here as well. I don't think it's a binary answer to the overarching question. It is a much more nuanced answer. I'm happy to discuss that further if that is of interest. The third rung of the ladder, as I said, Chair, is to ultimately build British, to focus on areas that we can develop our strengths in. And I have to point out that in the context of AI growth zones, it was a particular feature that we made sure Nscale, one of our neo-cloud hyperscale providers, was an important part of the supply chain. I noticed that Nscale yesterday raised the largest ever Series C in Europe, in part as a result of that support and convening that government did in that context. Arm is the leading chip design company globally. It is still headquartered in Cambridge, and we have fantastic companies in the AI inference chip part of the stack, Fractal and Olix being two of them. It is an area that I spend a lot of my time on. When it comes to models, we have huge strengths, not just in the fact that a number of the Gemini teams and researchers continue to sit in King's Cross at DeepMind, but also that companies developing foundation models in AI for science, in AI for autonomous vehicles, in embodied AI, in aspects of world models, and aspects of computer vision, reside here in the UK. Wave has just raised $1.5 billion just this year, the largest funding round in Europe to date for that stage. It is a fantastic company looking in particular at embodied AI and vision. I'm proud of these companies, and it is right that government is supporting them through the lens of tech sovereignty, as this is both what Britain and the company's best interests dictate. The Sovereign AI Unit will be crucial to this, and I'm glad to see the level of interest in that across the House as well. It will concentrate efforts on priority areas. I know there was interest in specifying those areas. The 4 areas that are at the outset of interest are novel compute, in particular focusing on the inference chip part of the stack, novel model architecture as well, looking at AI for science, where I point honourable members to the AI for Science strategy published by the Department 3 or 4 months ago, which set out particular areas of focus and priority there, and finally embodied AI as well. To give a concrete example of early action that the Sovereign AI Unit has taken, we have already invested $8 million in the Open Bind Consortium to accelerate AI-driven drug discovery and $5 million in the Encode AI for Science Fellowship, supporting the next generation of world-class talent. The focus of the unit will be on both capital and compute to incrementally anchor more and more British companies here. But I know that Sovereign AI as a unit will only be a part of the solution. We have a role to look at innovation and market support much broadly across the tech landscape. In November, we also announced a very significant advanced market commitment, a deeply innovative procurement shift, which meant that up to £100 million in government funding was available to buy products from promising UK chip companies once they reach a high-performance benchmark. This presents UK startups with an exciting opportunity to grow and compete right here, building for the world. Of course, AI is, of course, just one area of Britain's flourishing tech ecosystem. I have to point out to the honourable members, my honourable friends from Milton Keynes Central and Lichfield, who raised really important points about quantum, that the government has, in fact, doubled the rate of investment in quantum with about £1 billion committed over the next 4 years. The points on helium made by my honourable friend from Lichfield are very much taken into account. The government is looking at the situation that is developing of concern in terms of helium supply in the Middle East. Through our national programme, we broadly want to anchor development and access to technological capabilities most important to economic growth and national security. This means, in the context of quantum, more companies starting, growing and staying here. In the context of AI, not just developing capabilities in particular parts of the stack, but in part looking upstream in terms of skills as well. And in that context, to my honourable friends from Cambridge and Southend East, I have to totally agree with them that the quality and scale of our talent and skills in our universities and our schools is the single biggest determinant of where we end up. I am happy to write to the Honourable Member for Cambridge on the UKRI changes that we're making, and to the Honourable Member for Southend East. IP capitalisation is a deeply important part of what I focus on with the Intellectual Property Office. I'm happy to engage with him on the question of Essex University in particular.
Minister, for giving way on the point of research, you'll know that the Computer Misuse Act of 1990 criminalises a lot of legitimate cyber resilience and vulnerability research. I just wonder, I think that the government is minded to introduce a statutory defence for such researchers. I'm just wondering whether he can share about whether that defence will be introduced as part of the cyber bill.
I very much thank the honourable member for that point, and he is absolutely right to raise the point of defence for cybersecurity purposes. The Computer Misuse Act is being reviewed at the moment. The Home Office is looking at it. I did mention in the committee debate on this question that the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill was not the appropriate vehicle for it, given its much narrower scope than the broad scope that we would like in the context of a defence, and for those reasons I'm keen that we pursue it, but pursue it elsewhere as well. Madam Chair, I'm conscious of time, and so I will proceed at pace. Semiconductors are another technology alongside quantum and AI that underpin the global economy, fundamental to our way of life, and as part of our industrial strategy, digital and technology sector plan, we're taking measures to foster the growth of that particular sector as well. I want to try and also flag the particular point raised by my honourable friend from Mansfield, who I think spoke very thoughtfully about the fact that we shouldn't just rely on venture-focused companies in particular parts of the country, but looking at our industrial heritage. And that is exactly why I've been very focused in making sure the AI Growth Zone programme puts data centres in the northeast alongside the headquarters of our largest listed tech company, a deep heritage of financial services, technology innovation in Newcastle and the surrounding area, now being able to benefit from good jobs anchored by that data centre. In South Wales, the fact that that data centre is planned at the old site of the Ford car manufacturing plant, now giving hope for jobs in the semiconductor cluster as a result, anchored by that data centre, is a really critical part. In North Wales, the fact that the data centres are the things that are pulling our nuclear small modular reactor into the future is really critical to thousands of jobs in that community. In Lanarkshire, the fact that this old steel working community lost thousands of jobs, never fully recovered, and now has hope from £500 million of community investment as a result of those data centres is precisely what I believe in as well. I'm happy to give way.
Would my right honourable friend say one sentence about another geographical issue, which is collaboration with like-minded countries, especially in the EU? Thank you.
I would say simply a total note of affirmation on the importance of it. Having met a series of ministers from Europe, I know that we have a huge amount in common and a huge amount to do in the future as well. Madam Chair, I'm being tested on time pretty intensely, so I will focus on one final part, which is that some members have raised quite rightly the question of mergers, acquisitions and investment controls as well. And as the Chair of the Select Committee, my honourable friend will know from the time that I worked for her on the bill as it was proceeding through the House, the National Security Investment Act is an excellent example of where we're making sure that investment in sensitive areas are maintaining national security interests that Britain has both here and in the longer term as well. In summary, Madam Chair, this government will continue to support our tech sectors to the best it can do. Just yesterday, we had N-Scale raising the largest Series C funding round for its for all of Europe. We had Isambard AI raising a 50 million round for embodied AI, manufacturing AI as well. These are testaments to the approach that I have set out, which will ensure that British firms and people can seize every opportunity they can in a tech-enabled Britain.
Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.